What's going on, guys? John from Talking Ball here, and we are looking at the NBA draft tonight. Now, the draft is kind of ending up here. The first round is almost over as I'm recording this. So, for the most part, the biggest moves and the franchise impacting players have been selected already. Now, obviously, there could be one or two guys who slip through the cracks later on, but really, you're not going to know who that is until it happens. Um, but looking at the draft here, no big surprise in the beginning, 1-2. Ben Simmons going to the 76ers and Brandon Ingram going to the Los Angeles Lakers. Simmons is a point forward from LSU, and he's a guy who had a bit of a disappointing freshman year because of all the hype that was surrounding him as the next LeBron James and all that. And he was academically ineligible toward the end of the year, and they didn't wind up going to the NCAA tournament, and there were questions of his maturity level, and really the whole LSU thing was just a big circus, unfortunately, and Simmons didn't handle it too great, but I do think he has the potential to be a cornerstone piece for this rebuilding 76ers team now under control of Jerry Colangelo rather than Sam Hinkie. And with their big men there, you have Nerlens Noel and you have Jahlil Okafor, who might be moved, and they might look to keep Joel Embiid and pair him with Simmons because they just have so many big men, and there's just not enough minutes for all of them. They've lacked a primary ball handler, so Simmons will definitely be that going forward, and it's a really nice pick. It's probably the best pick they could have made. Ingram might have made more sense just from a positional value, but Simmons is the best player available, and they went and they took him. And I'm not too concerned about his maturity. I think he'll be just fine. So now you have Brandon Ingram from Duke going to the Lakers, and he fills a positional need and just a need for more talent. Huge defensive potential, huge potential overall, but he brings good shooting, good outside shooting to a team that, new coach Luke Walton might look to model a little bit after his Golden State Warriors that he coached for the first half of the season, just about. So you have Ingram and Clarkson and D'Angelo Russell, who are all very good three-point shooters, and they're going to definitely look to build that sort of team. They're not there just yet. Obviously, it'll be a few years, but Ingram filling out the three spot with Clarkson and Russell in the backcourt, and then you have Randall at the 4, and then center is kind of a spot that's still open, but the Lakers aren't competing for the playoffs next year. They're just probably looking to get another high-round draft pick and continue to fill out this roster with young talent. Then at 3, a pick that was really thought to be traded by the Celtics, potentially to the 76ers. The Celtics did stay put, and they took Jaylen Brown from California. This was a pretty decent surprise. I thought they would go with Chris from Washington or Dunn from Providence, and they did wind up taking Brown there. And with Brown, they get a guy who is defensive-oriented, great athleticism, great character, not the most offensively polished guy just yet, but that's okay. He doesn't need to be a true offensive difference maker for them right away. And he is kind of a boomer-bust selection because it's possible that he just doesn't develop too well. But he is a guy who wants to develop. And when the Celtics, you have picks from the Nets for the next couple of years, and presumably high-round draft picks, you can afford to take a risk on a player like Jaylen Brown who could return and pay great dividends to you. Then at 4, you had Dragan Bender from Croatia. I'm not too big a fan on Bender. He didn't play a lot of minutes overseas at Maccabi Tel Aviv in Israel. But I was wrong about Kristaps Porzingis last year going to the Knicks. I was completely wrong. I thought he would be a total bust, and he has been the complete opposite. And so it really these overseas players are difficult to judge because the level of talent is just different, and it's sometimes it's just not known, and you don't have the appropriate tape to watch. And then at pick 5, you had Minnesota going with Chris Dunn, the point guard there from Providence, and he is a guy who will probably take Ricky Rubio's job in the near future. Rubio's a very good passer, but he doesn't do too much else very well, in my opinion. and Dunn can definitely step in there and improve. And this young, slowly emerging Minnesota team could get very good very quickly next year with Tom Thibodeau taking over as head coach. Then at pick 6, you had Buddy Hield from Oklahoma, the senior shooting guard who put up huge numbers there. Was just an amazing player, and he's a guy who might not be a superstar at the NBA level. Definitely won't be Steph Curry like some people were trying to paint him. He's not that, but he is a very good 3-point specialist, and Jack compared him to Bradley Beal in his draft profile, and he's a guy who will definitely give Anthony Davis more room to work, and that's all you really want in New Orleans is just more space for Anthony Davis, because he is definitely your superstar player. And then at number 7, you had Jamal Murray from Kentucky, a combo guard going to the Denver Nuggets. And he's a guy who will team up with Emmanuel Mudiay and fill out that backcourt. And they've got a lot of young talent over in Denver, so I do like this pick quite a lot. They just took best player available, definitely. And the Denver Nuggets is a team that will continue to get better, slowly but surely. And they just keep adding great talent, and Murray is just another example of that. Then at pick 8, you had Marcus Chris from the power forward from Washington going to Sacramento, then only to be traded to the Phoenix Suns. So they wound up getting Bender and Chris. Chris is a really athletic guy. A lot of people thought of him similar to Aaron Gordon, and he's a guy who, if he develops correctly, Phoenix could definitely have a really good 1-2 punch with Chris and Bender if those two guys turn out well. And if they don't, then you got one guy. If one guy turns out well, then you'll feel pretty good about this draft. Then at pick 9, the Toronto Raptors took Jakob Poeltl from Utah. He's a center, kind of an old school type of center, and kind of a curious pick. Excuse me. In my mind, only because they already have Valanciunas there playing man into center spot. And he's a guy who's an excellent offensive player, working to get better defensively. But I think he's definitely a solid starter that, isn't you're not looking to replace him actively. But if he does move on from Toronto, then Poeltl could definitely see good minutes as a starter there. Then at pick 10, you had Thon Maker out of high school. The first high school player in quite a while to be drafted. He went to the Milwaukee Bucks, and this is a team that is really adding a lot of length with the Greek Freak, Jabari Parker, Chris Middleton. So they have some great lengthy defenders with a lot of athleticism already, and Maker is kind of similar in that mold. And he's probably the biggest boomer bust pick in this entire draft, because he could totally, fizzle out right away, or he could, turn into something big for a growing, youthful Milwaukee Bucks team. And then at pick 11, you had Domantas Sabonis from Gonzaga, the power forward there. Kind of an old school player, not exactly a new school stretch four, super athletic player, but still a good player. And this ignited then the trade that sent Sabonis to Oklahoma City along with Victor Oladipo. They went to Oklahoma City in exchange for Serge Ibaka. And Ibaka, of course, now moving on to Orlando, will kind of serve a role as the number one option most likely there. And I don't know if he's suited for that role just yet, but if he's going to truly shine and become a franchise-level player, it will be in Orlando. And then Oklahoma City, beefing up their roster with Victor Oladipo, a perfect fit next to Russell Westbrook. Very similar with that bulldog defensive mentality. Not quite as good an offensive player or as explosive nearly as Russell Westbrook, but Oladipo is still a very good player. And they're both they're doing both of making the team seem more appealing to Kevin Durant, while at the same time prepping for his potential departure from Oklahoma City. So I do like this trade quite a lot for both sides, but I would say Oklahoma City did get the best of the deal. So then moving on from there were a few more picks from pick 12, Taurean Prince from Baylor going to the Utah Jazz. Pretty good player there. I like that pick. I'm going to just highlight a few other picks that really stood out to me because you have a lot of international players that went, and I believe it tied the record for most international players who went in the first round, or it might have even broken that record at this point. But a lot of these guys are just, you don't know too much about them because they played overseas, and so many of those overseas players are eligible that it's hard to scout and know enough about all of them. So then at number 14 was a pick that definitely stood out to me with Denzel Valentine. His knee concerns didn't scare off the Bulls, and they got a guy now who can run they can run their offense through in Valentine with Derrick Rose gone. Looking to move Jimmy Butler, so the Bulls are definitely looking for a total restart potentially, and Valentine could be a key piece, not a franchise player, but a key piece and complimentary guy. So then moving on from there, another pick that I really liked was again from the Denver Nuggets, and that was Malik Beasley, the shooting guard from Florida State, an excellent offensive player, one of the top offensive players in this draft. In my opinion, and I think he will right away bring six-man type of scoring to Denver, even if he doesn't start as a high rotation player. He might start in the 10th or 9th spot, but I do think he'll work his way up to six-man right away. He could even challenge Jamal Murray for a starting spot, but I don't think just yet. I do think he's more of a specialist offensive shooter. So there you go, guys. That is my take on the NBA draft. Big night, a lot of surprises, a huge trade going down. Let me know what you think, if you agree or if you disagree. Remember, our 50 video in 50 days challenge is ongoing, so make sure you subscribe. Thanks for listening, guys.